Hello and welcome to the session. In today's session, we will be discussing about assembly language programming for 8086 microprocessor. To know about assembly language programming, you should take care, or in fact, you should learn all the sessions which we have already done with you. Okay, so it may be a good point that if you watch all those sessions, all the previous sessions, and the listing of the reference material for this session is the block 4 of MCS 12, and all previous sessions you can see onto the screen. All the previous sessions you can see on the screen. They started with basic computer and fixed point numbers. Then we went on to discuss about floating point numbers. All right. Then floating point representation and error detection codes. It was followed by combinational circuits, sequential circuits, memory organization, cache mapping, and I/O organization. All these sessions in some way are built up towards assembly language programming. Although on block 3 we have not conducted the session, but whatever we will be discussing about assembly level language programming, many of those things will be applicable for block 3, and you will be able to get a lot of information out of, you will be able to correlate, because block 4 technically is a good example of block 3. So that's why we have started with the example, and then we may go back to block 3 if the time permits. Otherwise, you can go through block 3 yourself, and it's one-to-one in many sense. Okay, so let's discuss about the outline about this presentation. First, we talk about a microprocessor. Now, in microprocessor, what we need to discuss is what do we mean by registers, what do we mean by instructions, and what do we mean by addressing modes, right? And how exactly a microprocessors look like. And then we will be talking about assembly language programming essentials, and followed by some programs on assembly language programming, which just to consolidate your learning into some actionable knowledge. I think after this particular session, I'm expecting you to start writing some of the assembly program which are given in your block and try to interpret them, and maybe running them, executing them using some of the assembler, whatever you can get hold of. A lot of names have been mentioned in your program guide, so you can refer to any of those. Now, first of all, what is 8086 microprocessor all about? Well, this microprocessor is a very, very old microprocessor, sometime designed in 1976 by Intel Corporation. Very old, isn't it? So almost, if we can say, it is more than 44 years old, and that is still we are talking about, and that too in computers. Well, there are so many good concepts which were there in this particular microprocessors, which could have been utilized even later on, and even today some of you might be having 808, I mean not 8086 but x86 processor line you might be using, and those lines are still still use this particular assembly language as the basic mode, and then it has been extended to further organization. So for learning purposes, it is not a bad processor to learn, okay, and the learning of this and later on you can extend your learning to other microprocessors, the latest microprocessor, and latest situations. The concepts are very, very important, and that is what we should be focusing on, and the assembly language programming, how we can actually get to know about assembly language programming, and then you can think in terms of migrating to other assembly language programming for other microprocessors. Well, so the very first thing is about address bus. Now, address bus is based primarily, as we discussed in the very first session, that we are talking about a computer system, and in computer system there are basically 3 components: the processor. Now that processor, when we build that complete processor into a computer chip, it becomes a microprocessor. Okay, and this microprocessor 8086 microprocessor was roughly the second or third in the category of the microprocessors which were designed using very large scale integration technologies. Now, one of the thing which you may find that this 8086 processor obviously should have some connection to the memory unit with the help of a bus interconnection, and input-output interfaces. Remember last to last session when we talked about input-output interfaces. Input-output interfaces are fast interfaces between the input-output devices and the processor. So, the input-output interfaces are connected to the bus. Okay, and input-output interfaces, the devices are connected. So, this is the whole organization of any simple or the simplest organization of any computer system. And the most important thing is the memory, because from memory only we fetch instructions and data, maybe with the help of cache, which enhances the speed of this particular operation. Alright, so the address bus is of 20 bit size, and therefore the supported memory. Now, if the address is of 20 bit size, how much is going to be our supported memory? Well, 2 to the power 20, and that turns out to be 1 megabyte. Right. So, many a times you must have heard that our older computers, whatever you used to use, the base memory of that computer is 1 megabyte, out of which 640 KB you can use for programs and 360 is for ROM and other kinds of purposes, right. So, this was the basis, because this particular microprocessor, that 20 bits address bus was there. Okay. But a very interesting thing was there, that is the register size of this particular microprocessor, or what we say the bits of this particular processor were 16. Today we have 32 and 64 bit processor, right, but the registers, most of the registers of this particular microprocessor are 16 bit. Okay. Now, that means this 16 bit address is to be converted into 20 bit, 16 bit is within the instruction. So, any instruction which will be having the data addresses to data, okay, is in general is 16 bit, and 16 bit addresses are fetched. Okay. So, in an instruction the addresses are stored with 16 bits only, but those addresses externally are converted to 20 bit addresses. So, that is the trick, I think, the segmentation which it was discussed, which is in the context of microprocessor and is defined in the cases of operating system also. That was the concept which was utilized to convert this 16 bit address into 20 bit address. So, very interesting thing that all the addresses within the instruction and data bus were only 16 bits in this particular processor. Alright, and the instruction size was variable instruction size. So, 6 byte to around 6 byte was the longest instruction, and 1 byte happened to be the smallest instruction. Now, you may be wondering why the instruction size should vary, because so far whatever example we have taken, we have kept the instruction size to be fixed, and today's technologies like reduced instruction set computers have fixed instruction lengths. Then why this particular processor had this? Well, this processor came in the category of complex instruction set computers, and different types of addressing modes, right? Different types of addressing schemes were possible for this particular processor. That made it that made the whole set of instruction very, very complex, and that is why some instructions were 1 byte, 2 byte, up to 6 byte. Then another interesting point of this processor was that it allowed fetching of 16 bit data starting from even location, taking one memory access only. So, now this is something which actually led to downfall of this particular processor. In fact, the successor of 8086 was 8088, which was utilized for developing microcomputers at sometime in 1976 and 77 rather than 8086, because most of the input-output devices actually interacted. They were already designed with the 8080 microprocessors, and they were interacting at a size of 8 bits. Now, that if that is there, that means your old devices could not be used with this particular microprocessor, and that led to a situation where a newer technology, a newer microprocessor was designed, 8088, which actually interacted. The external communication was only 8 bits, and the internal processing for that particular microprocessor was 16 bit. So, this was fetching 16 bit instructions or 16 bit data from the microprocessor. Now, this diagram which is very, very standard diagram you will find in your book, and all the references they are there. Okay, so this basically defines the 8086 processor very nicely, whatever we have discussed. Okay, 8086 address and data bus is at the topmost. Can you see the lines are being shared? All right. So this particular thing is going to be 20 bits. Out of these 20 bits, 16 will be used for data bus, and all 20s will be used for address bus. That means, if you remember when we were discussing about memory organization, we had column address strobe signal over there and row address strobe signal. Okay, which basically used to differentiate whether we are referring to column or we are referring to row. Now similar concept is over here. Okay, so one particular strobe will be there to recognize whether the present information on the address bus is data or address. Now why this particular thing was done? Because at the time when this particular microprocessor came into existence, the number of pins of processors were very, very at a premium time. I mean, they were kept on premium. So the more the number of pins, the more difficult the design of the processor was. Today, if you see Pentium processor, you will find many pins are there, right? So now that particular limitation is no more. Okay, and the disadvantage of, the advantage was saving the pin, which is no more than advantage in today's microprocessor. So it is not done these days. But the disadvantage of this thing for 8086 was primarily, first the address will be put, and only on the next step when address signal is dropped, then the data can be picked. So probably it amounted to slight delay in read and write process, which nowadays is not there for any microprocessor. Now there are two basic sections for this particular microprocessors which were executed in pipeline. Okay, so first is the bus interface unit, and the second is execution unit. So two units are there, and they can execute in parallel. That means bus interfacing and the bringing in data from, instructions on data from the bus can go on in parallel with this particular thing. Now you may be wondering why both can be performed in parallel. Well, this will be going on, like you are fetching the next instruction meanwhile while you are executing the previous instruction. So that way it can overlap. This is what is called pipelining, right? So the pipeline, one particular, you have in a single two-stage pipeline, you have two instructions. First one, where the bus is getting, it is in the bus interface section of the execution, and the second is in the execution unit side of section. Well, there is another unit over here which is called address adder. It primarily adds, so our objective was converting 16-bit addresses to 20-bit address. So this is the role of address adders. Okay, and the instructions are brought into instruction stream queue, which is 6 byte, and ES, CS, SS and DS are the segment registers. They are utilized to refer to the first location of a segment. Okay, ES for extra segment, CS for code segment, SS for stack segment, and DS for data segment. And IP happens to be the instruction pointer, which points to a particular specific offset of an instruction. And all these registers are of 16 bits. Whereas in the execution unit, obviously you will have arithmetic logic unit, which is displayed over here. Then you have control section, all right. Then you have operands, which will be coming from with the help of internal bus of the CPU, all right. So operands and flags. Flags are very, very interesting because flags are generated as a result of arithmetic operation. And very common flag which you are familiar, something like overflow. Right? Overflow actually results into flag is just a bit value. So if overflow flag has a value 1, that means as simple as that overflow has occurred. If it has value 0, no overflow. Similarly, there is another flag called zero flag. There is another flag called sign flag. Zero flag will be set. Set is 1. Reset or 0, clear is a state 0, all right. So zero flag will be set when the operand in the on a register happens to be 0, all right. So that is how these flags are recognized, and these are produced as a result of arithmetic operation. Many a times you must have heard about division by 0. Right? That is a typical interrupting condition. How we recognize that? The division by 0, as soon as you are trying to divide and you find that the operand flag is 0, you get that particular stuff. Okay. Okay. On this side, you have the operational register. AHAL basically were they have been selected keeping in the view that older processor had the 8-bit registers only. So AH is the higher byte and AL is the lower byte. Okay, so like that. So these are general purpose registers. All these general purpose registers are utilized for processing purposes. Okay, general processing. Now we will be looking at assembly language program and we will be getting more clarity about it. But just remember the name AL and AH. This happens to be the accumulator register. BL and BH base register, CH normally for counter, and DH is just an extra register which is there. SP, these are special purpose pointer register, SP, BP, SI and DI, stack pointer, base pointer, source index and destination index. These are utilized for the purpose of some addressing modes, and we would like to see those addressing modes a little bit later in this particular session. Okay. So this is what it is all about. This is what we discussed. Segment registers just points to the first location, starting location of the segment. General purpose registers, pointer and index registers, and then stack pointer. These are all very, very important registers. And then there are many flags which we spoke about. Okay. Now, how the address is calculated. Now, this is the information through which we come to know. So CS basically stores the address of the first location of a particular segment, all right, and it is shifted by 4 to the left, all right, basically 1 hex digit. So if you are given a hexadecimal number that CS contains 448A and the offset, that IP contains the instruction offset as 1, 2, 3, 4, then we simply need to shift CS by 4. Okay, so how many bits are there? 4 plus 4 plus 4 flows, right? 1 hex digit is 4 binary digits. So are they. So these are 16 bits, these are 16 bits. These 16 bits are the starting address of a memory location. That's why there is a 0 all the time on the last hex digit. Okay, and we simply add, all right, and we perform the hexadecimal addition. Now remember, in hexadecimal addition, the things are very, very simple. 0 and 4. That's how you will be basically, just putting the values over there. Physical address will be calculated on the basis of these addresses. For example, 8 plus 2 becomes A, right? 8 plus 2 is 10, 10 is A, right? 4 plus 1 is 5. So like that you can calculate the physical address, and many a times these kinds of questions are being asked, right? So you should be, maybe in your assignments also, so you should be ready for these kinds of calculations. Okay. The next important thing about 8086 microprocessor is its instruction set. Now instruction sets are most important thing for any microprocessor. An instruction set, primarily if I see an instruction, what does it contain? First, it should tell the processor what operation is to be performed, right? And second, it should tell to the processor on what data this operation is to be performed, right? So these are the two prime things which instruction set or complete instruction set should be able to tell us. Now the first thing, the operation and what registers or what data or what operand this operation is to be performed is the part of instruction set. And the second part is how this operand will be stored in memory, or whether this operand is in register or it is indirect pointer to a particular memory value. That is basically referenced by the addressing mode. Okay, so over here we are just referring to the instruction set, and all processor, in fact this will be available in your block 3 also, that all the processor will have data transfer instruction. Like these are the mnemonics of those data transfer instructions of 8086 microprocessor, moving data from one register to another, exchanging the value of two locations, not memory, but two maybe registers. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Similar when we talk about assembly language programming. So every operand, every operator over here, that is mnemonic of, that is instruction, will also be having some sort of addresses associated with that. Moving will require two addresses, exchange will require two addresses, this translate is another difficult, it will require many addresses maybe, push will require just one address, pop maybe one, maybe none. So it all depends that how these instructions are, how many operand these instructions want, vary as per the type of instruction. And details you can refer to the block. Similarly, arithmetic instruction, then obviously add instruction will require two operand, add with carry will require once again two, increment one operand, multiplication two, but some of those operands can be assumed. So lot many operands can come, lot many ways operands can be represented, and all these instructions have certain restrictions. It's not that all sorts of, like we understand, suppose I say add A, B, C, D, E, right? And it is an instruction which is very easily understandable by a normal human person. But that cannot happen in a microprocessor. In a microprocessor, even if I give an instruction like add A comma B, it will be interpreted as A is a memory location, B is a memory location, and adding those two memory location probably is not supported in 8086 microprocessor. That comes out and you will get an error, right? So there are certain limitations on what kind of operators can be put for those instructions within a microprocessor. So we will like to look into one or two examples a little bit later, and then you can refer to your blog for some of the basic requirements. Along with the discussion on assembly program, I'll be discussing some of these limitations. Then comes the bit manipulation. Many of you are learning C programming also along with, right? And all these operators are like NOT, AND, OR, XOR, these are bitwise operator. And there is two very important operations. These are called shift left and shift right. All right. Test is a different kind of operation which basically ANDs values and just sets the flag. Okay, but shift left and shift right is two operations which you are going to utilize very usefully, because shift left, that means the whole data is shifted to the left, is going to result into multiplication by 2, and shift right may be division by 2. So you can actually write very efficient program if you just want to divide by 2 or multiply by 2 by using shift left and shift right. So that is what you need to study and probably look into. Then transfer of control. Transfer of control, many of time you call functions, don't you? Okay, you write functions and call them. And once the function execute, there is a return statement which brings the control back to the calling statement, right? So these are the call and return kind of instructions. Then jump. Jump is an unconditional jump where we move from one location in the program or one instruction of the program to a further down instruction or further up instruction wherever the need so be. Loop, we all know, for loop, while loops. Okay, so these all are part of instruction set of 8086 also. However, these loops are going to be slightly more cumbersome and more complex to implement than normal instruction set of higher level programming language. Okay, we'll talk about it a bit later. Then we have string instruction. In fact, 8086 has been specialized for string instruction. Unfortunately, those were not utilized well. And then finally, the processing control, where carry bit is set for controlling the direction of matching the string and so on and so forth. So many of those examples are there in your blocks. Now finally, we move on to the addressing modes of 8086 processor, and we have just selected few addressing modes which you will be definitely using in the program which we will be discussing, and wherever any additional addressing mode will be required, we will be discussing then and there. So the first addressing modes. So what is, now this is a typical instruction, move AH BH, right? So move operation requires AH happens to be the destination and BH happens to be the source. So the value of BH will be moved to AH. That is what we need to do. So AH and BH happens to be the operand, and what kind of operand are they? AH is the name of the register and BH is also a name of the register, right? So both the operands are of register type. Whereas the immediate instruction, where what we are saying, AH, comma, this 5 is an immediate operand in hex or in decimal. In this case, it does not matter. Okay. So 5 is going to be moved into AH, right? Because 5 is going to be the same in hexadecimal as well as decimal. So this is what, that's why I am saying it does not matter in this case. Okay. So 5 is to be moved, a local value, an immediate operand. Immediate operand means the operand is within the instruction. Alright, operand is within the instruction. So you do not need to fetch this particular operand. Similarly, AH and BH are within the CPU. So you need not fetch the operand in this particular case. Operand is readily available, just perform the operation with the help of ALU. Alright, whereas, and how many registers are there? Hardly 16, 20. Right. So the addressing bits required to address a register will be just 5 bits, whereas memory was 1 megabyte and only 16 bits are required for addressing a memory location. That's what we said. But if there are memory operands, then obviously the size of instruction is going to be minimum 16 plus operation code, right? So this is going to be larger. That's why the complex instruction set have different sizes of memory, sizes of instruction, that is 1 byte to 6 byte as we have stated. Now this is the mode we are referring to, direct. Move AH comma X. Now X is a memory location in this particular case. So what is going to happen? X, which happens to be in the memory, right? So how big it is going to be? 16 bits. How big it is going to be? Just 5 bits. So 21 or 24, 25 or 26 for just for the addresses. And then the addressing mode specification and the operand code and etc. So this instruction is definitely going to be very, very large, right? At least 3 to 4 byte, right? Okay, this may be 4 byte instruction, right? So that's how the instructions are different. And X is an operand of what kind? That X is existing in the memory, right? So it is in the memory of the program. So technically speaking, if I want to execute this instruction, X is to be first fetched, okay, X is to be fetched into whatever MBR register which used to exist or data register, and then from data register it is to be transferred to AH register. So how, this is how this memory or this assembly instruction, now this is an assembly instruction, this is a typical 8086 assembly instruction. Now the problem with 8086 is, if I say move X comma Y, where both the operands are direct, right, then that is the kind of instruction which is not allowed. Why? Because this is 16, this is 16, right? So 32 bits are already used for these purposes, and the bits are not sufficient to represent other information in this. So this particular addressing mode was not utilized. That both the operands are of direct operand or the memory operand. Okay, so this is one particular limitation which will be hurting us all the time when we will be writing assembly programs. Okay, so remember this particular limitation. Okay, this is the first most important limitation, I must say. There is no limitation which is important, but this limitation from the point of view that we have to remember this limitation for further on. Okay, then register indirect. What we do in that, we initialize a register, let's say for example BX, which happens to be base register by a value, the offset of X. That means the 16-bit address of location X. So we put that BX value in BX register, this particular value, and then we can refer to BX indirectly. So the content of BX, right? So the content of BX register points to the address. Okay, so this is indirect, register indirect. That register, whatever we are referring to, this particular register BX, It does not contain the operand, but it contains the address of the operand. Okay, that is what register indirect is. So BX in this particular case contains address of the operand. Okay, that is how we do. Similarly, another index register was source index. So we put an offset into it, and then the register indirect, this is also register indirect. Source index contains the address of the operand in the memory, right. So source index is basically it is pointing to, okay. So that will be picked up, okay. So that is the basis, that is why these addressing mode, learning these addressing modes are very, very important. Whether they are direct operand, we know where exactly the operand value is. But if it is an indirect operand, that SI register contains the address of the operand. So we need to move this particular thing to MAR, memory address register, and fetch the operand and then perform the move operation with AH and that particular value. So that is how the whole instruction set of a microprocessor works. Not very difficult. There may be many more addressing modes, but then we can learn them gradually. I mean, don't rush to everything learning in one go. Learn them one by one. So what we need to know about a microprocessor, basically what are the different components of that particular microprocessor, what are the different registers of that particular microprocessor, what are the different instructions which are there in the microprocessor, and the kind of addressing modes that particular microprocessor supports. Once we know all these things, then we write assembly program for that processor. Now there are typical characteristics of assembly program. Let's discuss them a little bit slightly in more detail. So first thing is lower level programming. Assembly is a lower level programming. Programs are not portable. Now these are very important things. Many of you must be working with C. C is high level language programming. Assembly is low level language programming. C language was designed, in fact, to write Unix operating system, right, and 90% of the code of the Unix machine is written in C programming. Why? It is portable across different machine construction, right, different types of processor and different kinds of processor. But the remaining 10% is written in native assembly language of each those machines. So every microprocessor, since processor has been designed by different vendors, they have their own instruction set architecture, different kinds of instruction they keep. Okay, their instruction sets are different, their addressing mode implementations are different, and that's how the situation are. There is no standardization over here, right? Had it been there be such standardization, we would have got the all straight jacket kind of assembly language programming situation, but that never happened. All right, because everybody wanted to design the microprocessor of their own and a better microprocessor than others. So in the competition, that the microprocessor have its own set of instruction. Okay, there are now attempts to integrate it into reduced instruction set computers and so on and so forth, but you know the investments, the legacy investments make it very, very difficult to combine all the kinds of instruction sets into one and design a perfectly wonderful instruction set for every kind of situation. All right. It gives better control of the machine. All right. Why it gives better control of the machine? Just like I said, the string instruction, the compiler is not going to utilize that string instruction of 8086 microprocessors, because most of the compilers are they use instruction set architecture, but lesser amount, because you want portability across machines, right? So therefore you will find that better control of machine is by the assembly language programming. You can write efficient program. In fact, a few efficient program are written specifically. String matching algorithm, which has been implemented in your unit 4 or unit 3, you will find is one of the best example of efficiency in code. Okay, then program execution required. How do program execution in machine assembly language takes place? How does it take place in C? Okay, you first use an editor, right? to it may be any turbo editor, it may be any inbuilt editor, okay, or even Notepad, all right. So you can build, there is an editor where you produce the ASCII code for the program, and in editor we create a, for example, the name of the file is prog and ASM is the extension for the file, okay. So we create a assembly code, okay. So this is the assembly code, then it is passed through an assembler just like the compiler, all right. So it is passed through a compiler which produces an object code. Just the same thing happens in compiler. The only difference between compiler and assembler is compiler is for the higher level programming language and assembler is for an assembly language, all right. And then we have the linker and loader. They perform the same job what they perform in a higher level programming language also. That is, as linker links all the assembly subroutines together, assembly routines together, and then loader loads them and gets program executed. So this is how the whole that is working of assembly language program works. Now there are certain very typicality of assembly programs which you will find in most of the places, and let's devote some time onto it. Okay. The first thing is called that each assembler has directives, all right. Directives are in the context of assume. There are two important directives which we will be using, assume and end. These directives are information for assembler, not an assembly language or not an assembly executable statement, but these are some kind of communication. For example, in C you use brackets, right. So brackets basically creates a block. It's a kind of communication, right. So these are some kind of directives. They don't get compiled, right, or here they don't get assembled, but they are required to communicate some information to the assembler, all right. And obviously then they will be dependent on the assembler. A different assembler, you will have different directives, so they may change, okay, and that's how the situation is. Then how input output is performed in assembly. There can be some instructions, but another way of performing input output is with the help of software interrupts. So there is an interrupt instruction in assembly language which basically gets processed with the help of interrupt vector table. IVT, what you see over here, is called interrupt vector table, and this particular area is called rhombus. So what happens that this interrupt vector table, there are many interrupts, 64 interrupts which are there, and all these interrupts basically have the segment address and the offset, right. So these offset. So this is how an instruction of an interrupt is going to be, okay. So entry for the 10H is on this particular location, okay, the segment address and this. So it goes to the rhombus and then execute that particular interrupts. The advantage of, so interrupt processing in 8086 processor, right, is with the help of interrupt vector table, which makes, so this is the segment address of interrupt 10H F000 and this, and over here this is the subroutine, okay, subroutine kind, or we call it interrupt service routine, which resides in permanent memory, which permanent memory in this case is ROM, random read only memory. So there this interrupt programs are there, okay, interrupt programs, how interrupts are going to be handled, okay. So those programs are here, and this basically points to the how exactly those interrupt programs can be accessed. All right, and then processing takes place. So this is how the control is passed. So whenever there is a request for interrupt, okay, the related entry for interrupt 10H is it is a request of 10H. So this 10H is fetched. Program, now this particular program starts executing when there is a return, return statement. When the interrupt servicing program gets completed, then the control is passed back to the next instruction, which happens to be the add in this particular case. So this is how the interrupt processing works. and this interrupt processing is part of most of the assembly language programs. You can refer to this particular concept once again in your block your block 4 unit 2. All right. Now we move on to writing an exe programs. So most of the time we will be writing exe programs also, because number one, they use segments, and number two, they are compatible with other programs. Okay. They are compatible with other programs like higher level language program, compiled version of them. So you can utilize, you can use subroutines designed with using exe program concept, or segments, using segments. They can be easily linked up. And relocatable code, now this relocatable code you need to study in the operating system, but technically speaking, whenever in fact it can be microprogramming environment concept related also. So programs can be moved out of the main memory sometimes, and when we bring in the program again, they can be located in a different location, and you need to have a concept of relocatable code in that particular case. You will study this concept in the operating system course also, maybe later. All right. So now let us look into a assembly program and its components. All right. So what we are discussing is writing of exe program, and what should have, only the first statement is applicable now, use segments. So let's use segment on this particular thing. Now to find average of 2 byte value which are stored in the memory, that is the technical program. All right. Now the very first thing which we have to know here is, if I want to find the average of 2 byte value stored in the memory, okay, that is my program. Obviously my data should be stored somewhere. All right. So first, for an exe program, what I am going to define? The data segment, how my data is organized. All right. And in data segment, I don't define register spaces, right? I only specify the memory locations. Okay. A happens to be address of a memory location, B happens to be address of second, and C maybe the third memory location. And in addition, what I need to specify in C, what we say, int x, right? Int x equals to, let's say, 50. I can specify that particular thing, I can initialize it. In assembly, there is no int or I mean no distinction between int, float or something. You have to implement all these with the help of programs. All right. So A is data byte or data word or data quad word. All right. So either it is data byte or data word. Most of the time we will be using data byte or data word only. And if in this particular case A is of data byte, how big it is? It is going to have only 2 hex digits. So that's what? 53 in hex, and 53 in hex is going to be 83 as far as decimal is concerned. All right. Similarly, B contains, that is also data byte, and contains B1 in hex. All right. So hex specifications are easier and easily doable. Okay. So and C is also data byte, but does not contain anything. Why we have utilized C? Our program is find average of 2 bytes and store the result into a third location. So that is where we are using C, where the program is going to bring this particular result. Now input output onto the screen requires interrupts. So that is why we will go to those interrupts maybe slightly later, but for the timing, let's start with a program which only has values in the memory, and memory location will get changed because of that. So the data segment. So first segment is the data segment. Then comes the code segment. All right. Now in the code segment, the very first statement after the one, when we say code segment, we write these terms, and the name of data and code segment are not always going to be data or code, right? For example, I can change this data to data val. Okay, I can easily do that. Okay, code to code S or something, whatever you like. Okay, so you can change those names. Code segment, just for the sake you will be knowing that code segment, and code is ending over here. Main basically is a label which specifies the start of the data segment and all those kind of a thing, and we say the main has ended at this point of thing. This is a label. This also can change. Okay. Okay, so on the left hand side we have the labels. Labels will be used for go to or those jump addresses. Okay, in assembly we need to jump to certain labels, and that is what is that is why these labels are going to be useful. Okay, so this basically points to the start of the program. Okay, start label we say, and end this particular start label that finishes over there. But what assumes is stating, assume is basically an assembler directive which says CS, okay, code. What does it mean? The code, which is the name of code segment in this particular case. So code is a name of code segment. So whatever is the address or whatever is the starting location of this particular thing, which loader is going to load it into some memory location, that address will be loaded into code segment. Okay, so code segment register. So that address will be automatically loaded to code segment register. Okay, however, that doesn't happen, although we have specified data is a data segment, we have stated that, but this specific, this translation doesn't occur directly, and we have to write two instructions for them. That is initialize data segment. These are the limitations, right? These are the limitations, and that is why we have to write some instruction. So what we do, we first move data value. In fact, there is a mistake here. It should be data because the name of the data segment is data, right? I have just demonstrated, suppose the name of data segment is data value, then we can simply write data value. Otherwise, we can write simply data. So move AX comma, in this particular case it should be data only. Otherwise, if we name our data segment as data value, then it can be AX comma data value, which basically says that in AX register, move the address of, okay, move the start location, move this particular address, all right, move this particular segment, all right, this particular value, all right, and then this AX register is used to move or load data segment register with this particular address. All right. So that is how the whole thing works in this particular case. So what technically we are saying, that we are loading the data segment register with the address or the starting location of data segment name. Okay. That is how we are doing this particular thing. This is a slightly, I mean, it's a very trivial kind of a logic. It's not a very strong logic, but then unfortunately you cannot move an address directly to data segment. Okay, so that's why you move it to AX and then you bring it to data segment. So this is a slightly, I must say bad logic, but this is what we have to deal with. As I said, that certain things we have to deal with in microprocessors because of the limitations. Okay, so once we initialize the data segment, this is essential for, primarily it is initializing the data segment to the starting address of the segment. All right, that is what we do. And starting address is technically the location, this particular, wherever the segment is loaded. So data value points to the segment address, where in fact over here also it should be data value. So that's where you should just read it as data, not data value. Okay. Okay. Now the next thing is, we have done this particular part. Code segment automatically initialized by whom? By the loader. Data segment initialized by the first two statements. Then comes the program statement or program logic. All right. What is the program logic in this particular case? Now we need to add these two values, A and B. And what is the limitation? The limitation is, I cannot add these two locations directly. Okay. I simply cannot add A comma B because of the inherent limitations of 8086's instructions, that it cannot contain, an instruction cannot contain two memory operands. So that is the limitation. Therefore, what I need to do, I need to move A first into a register and then add B to that particular register. So effectively what I am saying, AL becomes A when I make this particular statement, which is 83. Okay, then I add B into AL register. Now this we are doing because of the limitations, right, of the instruction sets, and assembly have restrictions irrespective of whatever you do. Okay, so then sum becomes 83 plus 177, your sum becomes 104H, B1 plus 53, 3 plus 1, 4, B plus 5 becomes 16. So you take mod 16, which is that is 0 and the carry is 1, right. So that is how you know this is 104 in hex, which is equals to 260. You can check it out. Okay, so the addition has been performed. Now this result, is it complete result? No. The AL register, in fact AL register after the sum, what is the size of AL register? Only 8 bits. I can add only byte with byte, or I can add word with word in addition. Okay, so that is another limitation. I can't add word with a byte or something like that. Okay, so I have added byte with byte. So AL register is a byte register, so it will only have 04H. All right, and this 1 will actually go to the carry flag because it is carry of operation, carry due to an addition operation. So it will go to carry flag. All right. So that carry flag I want to bring to AH register. Then only my 104 will be in AX register. AH plus AL makes AX register. All right. So what I need to bring? I need to move 0 to AH, add with carry immediate operand 0. So I moved 0 into AH, I added 0 in AH, but along with I added carry. So what is going to be the result of AH register now? It is going to be just AH was 0 and now AH will become 1 because I have added carry into it. For this specific case, 1 will be there. Suppose there is no carry. Suppose the data was only 53 and 53, then there is no carry. In that particular case, there will not be any carry into AH register. That's all right, but we have to cover it. Okay, so we have to bring it. We have to cover the case when there is a carry, and that is why we have to write these two statements. All right, so these two statements. So once I have added, so my AH and AL, AH register now contains 01, AL register contains 04. Now I need to divide. Now divide instruction is very typical in 8086. It assumes divide instruction is, suppose I am dividing by a byte, then it assumes the first operand to which I am doing the division is in AX register, which is AH plus AL. All right. So it assumes, automatically assumes. So this BL, so what I am doing? I am bringing 2. I need to divide it by 2. Then only I will get an average. So I am taking a value 2 into BL register. This is an immediate operand. When I bring the value 2 into immediate the BL register, the next step will be to divide by BL. AX is the first operand automatically for division instruction. This is byte, this is word, right? Had it been, if I do division by a word operator, for example, BH, in that particular case, there will be DX AX pair that will be divided by this particular instruction. So need to refer to this also. So AX is 0104. When I divide it by BL, which contains 2, what I am going to get? Result, I am going to get 2 results. The remainder is going to be in AH register, and quotient comes to AL register. So if I divide it by 2, automatically what we are going to get? 82, because when you divide it by 2, nothing happens. Then there will be a carry. Carry doesn't make it 10, carry makes it 16. All right, this is hex. All right, so carry makes it 16, 16 divided by 2 happens to be 8, and 4 divided by 2 is 2, so that's why it is 82H. You can check, it is equivalent to 130, which is the average of these two numbers. All right, so this will be in AL register. Now it is in AL register, so it just need to be transferred. Okay, so next step will be transfer AL to C. And these two instructions are primarily interrupt 21H with AH value as 4C is primarily which shows a normal termination of the program. So this is how an assembly language program looks like, a complete assembly language program. All right. Similar program over here, I'll go a slightly, program to exchange two values. Now all those segments are same. Okay, value 1, value 2, all the things you can see, they are the same. Assume segment is also same, right? Data, now here it is correct. So data, all right, and AX to data and move DS with AX. This is what is once again that you are initializing the segment register. That's perfectly the same. What changes is the logic. Okay, once again, you cannot exchange two values directly. That is not allowed in an instruction, exchange instruction. So one of the operand will be brought into AL register and then it will be exchanged with our second value. Okay, so value 2 will get the value which was there in AL, and value 1 which is there in AL, value 1 will go to value 2 and value 2 will come to AL register, and that will be stored once again with the help of move statement, and interrupt 21H ends this particular thing. You just need to have actually move 4C00H, but that statement over here is missing, but you can always add that particular instruction. So exchanging two values become very trivial now. Okay, so with this particular logic is most important for you. Now this is the last program for today. So what we are doing, assume and all those things remains the same. Okay, there is no data segment in this particular case, so there is no data segment, data segment or so. So first two instructions which were there in the program, assume not required anymore because code segment will be automatically done. However, what we are moving, an immediate operand. Now note this quotations, single quotation. What it says that this is an ASCII value. So first ASCII digit is, so ASCII to packed decimal. Now what is ASCII to packed decimal? We'll see in the process. Okay, first we look into the operation. ASCII value of 5 is 00110101. So over here it is 5 and this is extra. Mask with 0F. I think I'll take a minute to describe this particular problem before we go further. What happens, whenever we input anything to any of the programs, most of the time you get input from the keyboard, and that keyboard value is in ASCII. Okay, now that ASCII is to be converted into decimal, okay, equivalent decimal. Luckily for us, these decimals, if you say the hex equivalent of 5, okay, hex equivalent of ASCII 5 is going to be 00110101. All right. So this is very, very standard. Similarly, hex equivalent to 9, okay, hex equivalent to 9 is going to be, this is where ASCII 010001. This nibble, these 4 bits are actually equivalent to 9, and 0011 is because of ASCII value. Similar over here. So this is 5, this is another value. Now just look into this particular situation. Okay, so what we need to convert, this into an equivalent value 59. And 59 should be equal to ASCII to packed decimal. So we are saying that this, when you enter 5 and 9, so this is, it should be equal to 59. Okay, but decimal equivalent of it. Okay, so first 4 digits should be 5 and second 4 digits should be 9. And what we have got? We have got 0011 in first register, which is BL, and this is the 00011 in the AL register. So what we need to do? We need to perform a mask operation, ending. That means we just need to null it out. and keep it. Okay, so what we will be remaining with? 5. 8 bits, but 5. All right? And then we rotate it. We rotate it to left by 4 bits. So what we get? These values into the higher nibble. Okay, all this transferred. So this transfer takes place. Rotation by 4. All right? And once the rotation by 4 is there, it comes over here. Over here we just need to remove this and out this, mask out this, because this is 9. So just mask out this. All right? So what we get? This value is ANDing bitwise back and masking is taking AND operation. So I get 1 0 0 0 from this, and ANDing with 0 is going to result into 0. All right? So if I OR this particular value, all right, which was after rotation, if I simply OR it with 9, I am going to get this is 5, this is 9. This is what the answer is. So look into the program. Okay, so BL contains 5. What does it contain? 0 0 1 1 0 1 0 1. And AL contains 9 and BL with 0 FH. ANDing 0 1 F0 FH, right? So first 4 zeros, all ones. AND them, all right? ANDing will result, these all will become 0. 1 and 0 is 0, right? 1 and 0 is 0. 0 0 is 0, obviously. Okay, so this 1 1 is 1. 1 and 0 is 0. 0 1, basically 0 1 0 1 will reappear over here. ANDing with all ones will bring in this operator completely like it. ANDing with all 0 will null, make this particular value as null value. All right. So this is how you get it. Okay. So you AND it, then you AND AL with 0 FH. Similarly, so you ANDed AL with 0 FH. Okay. You get this particular value 0 0 0 1 0 0 1 in a similar way. All right. Then you do move CL by 4. In CL we have moved the value 4, and rotation of BL to make rotation of this particular thing by 4, so that this particular stuff comes here. All right. So rotation by 4, we did that particular thing. Sorry. Okay, rotation has been performed, and finally ORing AL with BL. Now AL contains what at this point of time? AL contains 0 0 0 1 0 0 1 and BL contains 0 1 0 1 this. So if I AND this with this, okay, OR, right? So 0 0 0 1 and 0 becomes 1. Okay, so the OR is very easy. Wherever, if 1 is appearing anywhere, okay, the equivalent value will be 1. All right. So OR with 0. So we are ORing 0 0 0 with 1 0 0 0 and these two. We are ORing these two values to get 0 0 1. Okay, you can try it yourself. You will get this is 5, this is 9. So overall you will get the required value, that is 5 and 9, which is binary equivalent of, the binary equivalent of hex digit 59. All right. So this is a first conversion using assembly. Difficult, slightly difficult, but you can always work it out by the examples and by writing to us on mca@ignou.ac.in wherever you are not understanding this particular problem. Otherwise, you can also join MCS 12 Computer Organization Facebook page, all right, and you can ask as many questions whatever about this assembly language programming or computer organization, right? So best of luck, do well. Assembly is not easy. Do as much study as possible, and then keep asking questions, keep solving problems, and keep discussing with me. Thank you.